Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. You're currently on hold for the UFC 191 conference call. At this time, we're still admitting additional participants and plan to be underway shortly. We do appreciate your patience, and we ask that you please remain on the line. Please stand by. We are about to begin. Good day, and welcome to the UFC 191 conference call. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Mr. Chris Costello. Please go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Chanel. I want to welcome everybody to the UFC 191 media conference call. UFC 191 takes place Saturday, September 5th from the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. The event airs live on pay-per-view. On today's call, please welcome the main and co-main event stars of UFC 191, UFC flyweight champion and number 3 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Demetrius Johnson, number 1 contender, John Dodson, and former UFC heavyweight champions, Andre Arlovski and Frank Mir. And with that, we'll go ahead and open up the questions.
If you would like to ask a question, please signal by pressing star 1 on your telephone keypad. If you're using a speakerphone, please make sure that your mute function is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. Once again, press star 1 for questions, and we'll pause for just a moment to allow everyone an opportunity to signal. Now, as a reminder, this is star 1 for questions. We'll take our first question from Damon Martin with Fox Sports.
Yeah, I'd like to start off with Andre. Andre, this is a fight that's basically a decade in the making. You and Frank were supposed to fight, back in 2004, 2005, and then he had his motorcycle accident. But I wanted to ask, what do you remember about, Frank Mir from those days and wanting to fight him back then?
Definitely at that time, and I still have a lot of respect to Frank, and at that time he was just dangerous on the ground because he's a black belt, but now I saw his last 2 fights, and he's very dangerous in standing, so I have to keep in mind also he's not only a black belt, and also he has a power to knock people out, so I need to be ready for this as well.
Is there some sense of closure having this fight, Andre, considering that you never got the chance? I mean, at that time, you two were the top heavyweights in the UFC. I mean, is there some sense of closure of finally getting to have this fight?
Can you repeat your question, please, because you're breaking up a little bit?
Sure. Is there some sense of closure to finally get to fight Frank after, 10 years ago you were supposed to fight when you guys were both the best heavyweights in the UFC? Is there a sense of closure finally having this fight?
Oh, first of all, it's going to be an honor to fight Frank because actually I'm very happy for him. Frank and I, we like old school fighters. He's climbing back on the top right now. I'm number 4, and I'm very excited about that fight, and I'm sure a lot of fans when I see that fight, and I'm sure it's going to be a good fight for our MMA fans, and it's an honor to face Frank on a co-main event on UFC 191 in Vegas.
And what does it say, Andre, about you and Frank having the longevity to be relevant, be champions in 2004 and 2005, and here you are both back in the top 10 in 2015. I mean, what does that say about the work you've put in and the career you've built to still be here 10 years after you were first UFC champion?
Like I said, I'm very happy for Frank, and I'm sure it's going to be a great fight, and we're old school fighters, and I'm sure we're going to surprise a lot of people.
And question for Demetrius. Demetrius, I know there's a lot of bad blood, brewing between you and John Dodson. You've been able to take yourself out of being too emotional before any fight, but is there an extra level of emotion for a fight like this, fighting John a second time, knowing the rivalry that's there?
I don't want to call it bad blood or emotional. It's almost like any other fight. Regardless if I win or lose, I keep it moving and I go on to the next one. So that's how I look at all my fights, and that's how I look at this one.
Is there a sense of putting a guy like John behind him? If you're able to win, September 5th, that's 2 wins over him. Obviously, there's we don't see a third fight very often. I mean, is there some sense of that if you beat him this second time, you probably wouldn't have to deal with him again?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I plan on being in the sport for a long time, and I believe John Dodson will be in the sport for a long time as well. So I think our paths will cross again, just like I believe my path will cross again with Justin to beat us, whether I win this fight or not. We're the top fighters in the world, and we keep being there all the people who are below us. So I think our paths will cross again, regardless of who's champ or not.
Awesome. Thank you.
We'll take our next question from Jack Incarnacio with Boston Herald.
Thank you. Dimitri, would you say that John has been your toughest challenge as champion?
Yeah, definitely. When we first fought, I got in trouble at the beginning of the fight, and then I had to make a little adjustment and then finally wait till I get my hands on him. And then other than that, in the stand-up department, absolutely. I fought, you want to look at my championship fights, you date back to Dominic Cruz. We were fighting everywhere on the feet. I mean, the man suplexed me twice, so... Dominic Cruz, that was a tough fight for me, which I believe gave me, the experience to be able to be successful at 125.
Sure. What was challenging in particular about the way John fought you? It seemed early that closing the distance was a priority for you. You did find success when you were able to get the clinch, but it seemed like getting in there was challenging at first for you. Well,
it's an octagon. You have, 2 men in there who weigh 125 pounds. And we're both 5'3", and you're in a 25-foot octagon, so and you don't get called for backing up. So if a person goes forward and another person backs up, it's going to take a long time for that person to get the other person. And if you look at the first fight, he is a counterpuncher, so he likes to use movement and wait for his opponent to overextend, which I ended up doing in the first fight. And eventually, once he got tired and stopped running as much, I was able to get my wrestling and my clinch game and get to him, then, that's what happened. And I always use the analogy, if you have 2 cars, if 2 people that are going to fight, they have to clash. And when that clash happens, that's when the clinch game starts, that's when the wrestling starts, that's when the jiu-jitsu, or even striking. But, in the beginning of the fight, I was trying to get to him. I was going forward and he was going back. That's why that happened.
John, do you feel like you had any missed opportunities in that fight, looking back on it?
Yeah, I had a missed opportunity of knocking his head off. I messed up and
with a few shots that I missed on when I dropped him. I should have capitalized on it. I mean, Demetrius was a tougher opponent, but he continuously has that conditioning in that championship level where he wants to get back up and stand to his feet every chance he gets. So my opportunity is just to capitalize on every mistake that he made.
When you go back and watch that fight, what stands out to you?
Me not punching him in the face, especially when he hits the ground.
When he hits the ground, okay. Get following up on your knockdowns or your near knockdowns.
Yeah, because everyone saw me with a vicious intent of my killer instinct when I had knocked out on TJ Dillashaw, Darryl Montague, and everyone else that I put down. I didn't have to show that same type of intensity or that level of killer instinct against Demetrius Johnson because I showed way too much respect in that fight. And then when this one's coming up, I'm going to make sure that, I see Demetrius just as another fighter and not as a champion.
Thanks. Quick question for Frank. Frank, can you tell us your earliest memory of Andre Arlovski?
I don't know which one's the earliest one, but I remember when I watched him fight Cavis Pereira, and I just remember being just overwhelmed with really impressed with how overwhelming he was. His offense, his footwork, his combinations. I remember just being so impressed, and I think a lot of times we try to keep things in perspective that we're all fighters and we have to fight each other. But it was one of those few times where actually, I personally was a fan, where I'm like, wow, this is a very beautiful thing to watch. So impressive, so explosive, so fast, and the fan in me also came out.
Did you think about ways that you could beat him even back then? Your style was a bit different back then, and you would have approached him differently back then than today, I'd imagine.
Yeah, no, I think Andre poses a huge threat. Offensively, he's one of the best fighters in the UFC. His speed, his footwork, his movement, how hard he hits, and he's, people forget sometimes the guy's also extremely technical grappler. The guy was, a champion sambo player. So to go out there, you just can't fall asleep on the fact that, his first fight in the UFC, he was arm-barring people, submitting them, even won the title with a footlock after using phenomenal boxing and kickboxing and movement on his feet. So the guy really is a threat everywhere as far as exciting and to finish fights. You never have to worry about him really being a fighter that's going to try to drag a fight out, lay on you, and just look for a referee's decision. The guy is super entertaining. I think he's great to have him back and up climbing the ranks like he is now for the sport. I think it's great for everybody.
Last one for me. Andre, we've seen Frank log a few knockouts recently. That certainly wasn't the big threat he was presenting back when you were the champion. What do you think of his striking? What do you think of the knockouts he's been able to get? Are you impressed?
Like I mentioned before, I was so surprised, and like I said, he's not only dangerous right now on the ground, he also has great boxing skills, and he has power in his hands, and last 2 victories over Bigfoot and Duffy, it was amazing, and it was impressive for me, and I just need to keep in mind he can throw punches, he can throw combos, and I just need to keep my hands up all the time.
Thank you.
And we'll go next to Mike Bond with USA Today Sports.
For Demetrius and for John, you guys are both undefeated in rematches during your career. Can you talk about, how you approach fighting an opponent for the second time, whether it's, having tactics in the fight or your mental approach, all those kind of things? Demetrius first, then for John.
For me, we were able to go back and look at the very first studio or the fight we had with that person, and even look at his previous videos that the person had after we fought, and just go back and keep on completing training as being the best martial artist you can when you got there and fight that night. Other than that, you can see the success you had from the first fight, but doesn't mean that success is going to be there in the second fight because, time, as time goes on, that person will and should get better as a fighter.
Yeah, for me, I just think that it's different. It's a different fighter every single time I come into the ring. So he should be a brand new person, every single, as if he's a new opponent. He has new skills, new assets, and he's more dangerous, man.
Awesome. And then for Frank, after your last fight, you're on the 2-fight winning streak now. You're getting back into the groove of things. And, people were talking about him challenging for the title and all these things. Were you surprised when they gave you this matchup?
Yeah, actually I was. I got the call just a few days after my fight. I was asked if I would contribute to the already great card coming on Labor Day weekend. And, it was asked that, it would help the card overall. And so, I took it. I stepped up to the opportunity that they presented me.
Yeah, and then another one for you. Between you and Andre, you have including this fight coming up, you'll have 44 UFC fights, which I believe is the most for any two opponents in UFC history. And, you're 1-2 in heavyweight appearances and wins and knockouts and everything. Do you think this one, kind of determines who's really the best, heavyweight in the UFC of all time? Or what do you think this fight really means for your guys' legacy?
Well, I think that pretty much Andre and I just represent the same thing. So I really think there's no losers on September 5th. We're both guys that, we're champions. We're at the top of the sport. We worked our way up there. And then we both had it to where people counted us out. I read articles where they thought that Andre was no longer had it. I read the same articles. They said that I should retire and I should call it a night. And here we back are in the mix of things. Andre is knocking on the door of a title fight. He's ranked 4th in the world. I'm back in the top 10. Retirement talks have definitely been, I think, silenced slightly now. And so I think both of us represent that as long as you're diligent, you train hard, and you have heart behind what you're doing, that, success will come. You just have to keep, marching forward, regardless of what those around you are saying.
Yeah, and then last thing for you, Frank. By the time this fight happens in the UFC for over 5,000 days, I think the longest tenured fighter in the company without ever being cut or fighting in another promotion or anything. Can you guys just talk about your run up until this point? I know you've had ups and downs and, won titles and all that stuff.
Well, I'll go first. I was just talking. I think that it is just being diligent, just trying, going out there and just not accepting defeat. Andre has ran up against obstacles at one time. When Andre was the champ, he looked near unbeatable. He was the most intimidating guy. Walking out to the octagon, hopping around, jumping, just striking and boxing. He was really ahead of his game. Nobody in the heavyweight division had hands like him at that time. He kind of paved the way for more guys becoming better strikers and really sitting and learning boxing, myself included. Going and trying to be diligent about how to be a better fighter on our feet. And so I think that that's just what we represent, is just, hitting hardship and just coming through it. I think a lot of people can relate to that in their life, where you hit adversity and things aren't going well and you go out there and you keep trying. And a lot of people, they feel that, well, I'm just going to call it a day and then sign off. And Andre never took no for an answer, and neither have I. And we just kept out there and fighting and pushing and then put ourselves back in the situation.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess.
As a reminder, it is star 1 for questions. We'll go next to Jeffrey Harris with 411 Mania.
Greetings. Thank you all for joining us today. Andre, so this fight, you're ranked number 4 right now. Frank Mir is number 10. Obviously this is a great heavyweight matchup, but some people were suspecting you were in line for a title shot after beating Travis Brown. Were you expecting maybe a bigger fight than Mir before you got offered this matchup?
Absolutely not. Of course, I would love to fight for the title if UFC propose on the fight for the next fight. But at the same time, I want to make some money, And Frank Mir, he's not a joke. He's a very dangerous, very, very good fighter, and also it's going to be another big test for me. So I'm just like I mentioned before. It's an honor for me to face Frank Mir on a big UFC event on September 5th, 191, and I'm very excited, it doesn't matter. I'm just like other heavyweights in the line, So now I have to face Mir. It's for me. It's like title fight for me, I just need to be ready and show my skills.
And Andre, Frank did mention that he didn't really want to fight you as much because you were friends, and I guess there's an association with Team Jackson. Was that an issue at all when you had to think about taking this fight?
You know what? Definitely it's nothing personal. It's definitely it's business. Frank has to pay bills. I need to pay some bills. That's why it's nothing personal, just a business. It's just another fight for us. And I don't know what to say. It's just business.
Now, Frank, for you, is Andre standing in the way of you getting back in the title mix? Do you see him as your ticket, maybe getting another title shot in the future?
No, I look at every opportunity to go out there and fight as just one step closer to the title. I don't foresee that one particular fight is that's the fight that's going to skyrocket or make or break me. Each guy's dangerous, and I really don't that's what I've attributed my last couple of fights. Part of my mental success is I just approach it that each fight is its own separate entity, and that's who I'm facing. And and Andre's right. It's just business. That's the next fight that they wanted me to go ahead and fight. And obviously, I had mentioned that I would rather it if it had more time. I thought that maybe this fight had so much history behind it that maybe a build-up would have been longer than 6 weeks would have been better for us. Or at the same time, I think both of us represent so many of the same great qualities of persevering through adversity. I would have liked it if one of us had the title and the other one came up and was the one that challenged, so many years later. I thought that, when you write the story at the end of our lives, that would have been a much more interesting read than this kind of hurried rush, despite each other now. Both of us right now at this point of our success.
And for the champion, Demetrius, in the past, John Dodson has claimed on the MMA Hour that whenever you get asked about fighting John Dodson again, you're super butthurt about it. Are you butthurt that you have to fight him again, and because he thinks he's your toughest fight?
Absolutely not. I think a lot of people misconstrue that, where everybody thinks they're entitled to something in this sport. For a big example, Miesha Tate was guaranteed a next title shot, and then UFC came out and said, nope, Marlon Rock's fighting Holly Holm, sorry, and then Miesha Tate got butthurt. So when, Dodson was saying that I'm next for the title shot, I was like, UFC ain't called me about nothing yet. I had never heard your name come out of UFC's mouth at all. So each time the UFC calls and says, hey, this is your fight, I said, sounds good, sweet, when we're going to fight. That's where it came at. So that's more in the line of people saying that they're entitled to things, to where nobody's entitled to shit in this sport. When you get the call, that's when you get the call.
Now, for John, the last fight you had with Demetrius, you lost on the scorecards. It was 48-47 on 2 scorecards, 49-46 on 1. What do you think you have to do this time to make sure you're the winner? And I think you're probably one of the few guys in the division that can maybe match Demetrius Johnson in terms of speed. Is it an issue of speed, or is it the wrestling? What do you think it is this time?
Oh, this time I'm not going to let go to the judges. I'm going to go balls to the wall, and I hope DJ's willing to go do the same thing.
And when you're thinking you're going to win the title, do you think you will make a better champion than Demetrius Johnson?
Of course, everyone likes my face anyway. They already said I'm the greatest of all time, so why not? They already forgot about the DJ.
Thank you very much, everyone.
No problem. You are welcome.
And we'll take our next question from Daniel Flynn with Breitbart Sports.
Question for Frank and Andre. Most of the heavyweights that you fought early in your career, they're either watching the UFC at home or they don't compete at the high level that they once did. What is different about you guys? What did you do differently in your careers to be fighting in the co-main event of a UFC pay-per-view 15 years into your careers? What is different that you've done than these other guys who are not relevant anymore?
For me, it's just with age. I think I became a smarter person and a fighter. I choose what's more important for me, and I have a second run in UFC, and I'm sure it's going to be better than first one. And I will do everything possible to be a champion again. And I just love what I'm doing right now, and I feel great, and I still have fire in my eyes. I just ready to go, and I'm very excited to be a part of this great event on September 5th. And it's different Arlovski than I was like 10, 15 years ago, and I still have that hope in my mind that I'm going to be interesting for my fans, and I'm just do everything possible to put a great show on September 5th.
Yeah, on my part, I feel that just we keep showing up every day. Andre has never, called it quits. I never called it quits. No matter what adversity we ran up into, and after losses, we still show up the next day at the gym, and we look to make ourselves better fighters and better men. I think that's a testament to why we're able to still be here and pushing forward in other guys that decided to end the journey.
Question for Demetrius. You compete as one of the most accomplished fighters in the UFC, but the fan interest in your division isn't what it is for some of the other divisions. Do you think the fans particularly now, do you think if the fans appreciate fighters who talk like a champion more than fighters who fight like a champion? And does this frustrate you as a guy who's consistently named one of the top pound-for-pound guys in the world, that a lot of the fan attention is focused on other guys who maybe don't have the resume that you have?
I try not to focus on that, because at one point in time in my career, it was like, oh, he never finishes nobody. The next thing you know, I'm breaking people's arms and making them tap out and knocking them out. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, I don't like his personality. And it's like, okay, well, you know, if you don't like who I am, can't help you there, buddy. So I try not to feed him that stuff, because it's only going to go so far. And when you start to worry about that stuff and really get in your mind, and you stop putting on great performances and writing your name in the history book where you know, win the last submission ever in the UFC history, I'm more focused on that. That's all that matters to me, is going out there performing and showing I'm a well-rounded fighter where I can strike, grapple, submit, clinch, anything. You know, you look in the encyclopedia, you ask what fighter can do any type of martial arts at a high caliber level, my picture will show up.
Question for John. Do you think if you become the flyweight champion, the division would become more marketable with a guy who's seen as more charismatic, you know, a bigger personality than perhaps Demetrius, you know, in yourself?
Of course, because everyone wants to sit there and cheer on for a character, and they don't want their business and entertaining and not just being a good fighter. There's a million good fighters out there, but they just don't make it to this level.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll take a follow-up question from Damon Martins with Fox Sports.
A couple more for Demetrius. DJ, you know, I know that, you know, getting reaction from fans is one thing, but always getting admiration from other fighters is nice. And I don't know if you saw, but recently Ronda Rousey had said that, you know, you are her favorite fighter to watch in the UFC. She said you're the most well-rounded, and it feels like she's watching Dragon Ball Z when she's watching you fight. I'm just curious your reaction to knowing that, you know, someone like Ronda looks at you as her favorite fighter.
Well, she's very educated, and I got nothing but love for Ronda Rousey, and that's the thing. You know, I've never walked across another fighter in the UFC from heavyweight all the way down to women's strawweight, middleweight, man, you know, other champions, and I've always got great praises, and I give it back to those guys as well. So it's only the fans and the uneducated fools out there who say, oh, you're boring, and I'm like, can't you say so, but you just don't understand what I'm doing. You don't understand the process and the technique that I bring to the table. So I'm in awe that Ronda Rousey thinks that highly of me, and that's awesome.
And a follow-up to that, you know, I know in the past, you know, interviews, media, that's just part of doing this. And I know you'd done an interview recently where you had said that, you know, the guys at the UFC just said, you know, be yourself, say what you want to say, you know, instead of, you know, don't be guarded. Are you finding yourself kind of opening up a little bit more? I mean, you know, in terms of interviews or just saying whatever's on your mind? I mean, obviously a lot of times that's what ends up getting the most attention, is just being brutally honest.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that you can't make everybody in the world happy. You know, people, I've seen, you know, comments about me being bluntly honest and speaking my mind, and so many on the internet was like, dude, I wish that person just shut the hell up about like being the badass man who just shows up at the bar and kicks everybody's ass. And see, right there's another person who, you know, you can make a cup of tea, he's either going to like it or that person's not. So you can make everyone happy. Once you start trying to make everybody in the world happy and make the fans happy, then you're going to lose sight what's more important, which is being the best mixed martial artist in the world.
Do you think it would just be disingenuous if you all of a sudden tried to be Conor McGregor, or, you know, tried to trash talk your opponents, or tried to say that, you know, you're the greatest in the world? I mean, do you think that would be even worse than, you know, if you just suddenly, you know, tried to start touting yourself that way? Do you think that would just be more disingenuous if you suddenly tried to become that kind of personality?
I think so, and Dana White's gone on the record as saying it. When Anderson Silva first showed up to the UFC, he wasn't the star he was. It took something like Chael Sonnen to come by to make him to get everybody noticed. Same thing with, you know, Chris Weidman. He really hasn't taken off until, you know, his last fight after he beat Vitor Belfort. I mean, Ronda Rousey, she's making her opponents look like, you know, stars. But people tune in to see Ronda Rousey's skill set, how fast she's going to beat this opponent again. You know, I read the article today, she did 900,000 pay-per-view buys. That's amazing for somebody who's had a short time in the sport.
Yeah. And last question for you, DJ. To that point, I was talking to Brian Stan, and he actually made that comment about, he said he thinks that, the key for you reaching that next level of stardom is to have your Chael Sonnen, to have that person to push you. And honestly, no one really has pushed you that much, outside of John Dodson in your first fight with him. I mean, is John Dodson that person, or do you feel like you still need that natural rival to push you to that next level?
It's kind of hard to say because the question I come back to is that what happens after this? Regardless if I lose or if I win, what happens after this? And that's what I'm always looking forward to is the future. Let's say I go out there, put on a spectacular performance, and I end up being John Dodson. People are still going to talk. People are still going to say, oh, well, what was it? When I knocked out Joseph Benavidez, one of the comments that made me laugh so hard was, yeah, man, I sat there and watched Joseph Benavidez get knocked out by Demetrius Johnson, and I just shrugged my shoulders and went out and bought a burrito. That's okay. That's good. So, like I said, I'm not focused on trying to get the fans' notoriety and get them rallied behind me. If you want to see great mixed martial arts, tune in when I fight. If you want to see drama and all that stuff, you guys can go watch Bachelors in Paradise. They'll give you enough drama you can want to watch.
And a question for Frank. Frank, because you have been in the UFC for so long, but you also were around during the days when everyone said, the Pride heavyweights were the best ever. I'm curious now, with where the heavyweight division is at right now, with Fabricio as champion, Kane and yourself and Andre and all these other guys, is this the best the heavyweight division's ever been, or is there another era that you would point to say that that's when the heavyweight division was at its best?
No, I think this era right now is the best it's ever been. I think in the past, we've always had top-level guys, but I think it dwindled off after 4 or 5. Right now, I mean, there's guys that are 12, 13, 14 that are great fighters in the heavyweight division. So I think the top 10 right now is extremely stacked, and I think it's the most stacked it's ever been.
And last question for you, Frank. You are defined, in many ways as the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. Obviously we know the conversation about Fedor Emelianenko maybe being the greatest heavyweight of all time. But I'm curious, as you get on this this latest run, 2 wins in a row, 2 knockouts in a row, and you get ready to face Andre Arlovski, maybe make another title run. Are those things that matter to you? Legacy, things like hearing, greatest heavyweights of all time. Are those things that do matter to you?
No, I mean, I think my wife and kids try to listen to it more than I do. Honestly, every time I hear it, I just kind of, I think most guys that are at our level are extremely critical of ourselves. So I think I have a hard time seeing myself in that light. And that's probably one of the reasons why I'm still so diligent about being in the gym and training and pushing myself, is because I really don't think I've accomplished near enough of what I want to.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
And we'll take our next follow-up question from Jack Encarnacio with Boston Herald.
Thanks again. Demetrius, I'm looking at the flyweight rankings. I see John's name, of course, who you defeated and who you rematch. You've beaten Joe Benavidez. Formiga's there, but he's lost to both John and Joe. Ian McCall, who you've beaten. Moraga, who you've beaten. Horiguchi, who you've beaten. Lineker has trouble with weight. What do you think of the division? If you defeat John in a rematch here, do you feel like you've done your business at 125?
No, there's still a lot of guys I still haven't fought, haven't fought Sergio Pettis, haven't fought Henry Cejudo, haven't fought Ryan Benoit. Those are all great athletes just because they're not big star names, like the other guys, and they haven't worked their way up there and had the chance to test their skill set against, guys like Dodson or Benavidez or Ian McCall. Doesn't mean they're not a challenge or something I'm not looking forward to fighting.
What is your thought about ever doing 135 at this point in your career now?
At this point in my career, it's not even on my mind. I mean, I'm a small guy, and right now I'm just focused on John Dodson. Once the time comes and I've, broken the record and set goals, the goals that I want to make, then I'll start thinking about going to 135.
Sure. Could you tell us quickly what those goals are, roughly what you see?
Yeah, obviously, when I got into sport, this was a hobby for me, and right now I'm going for my 7th title defense. The record is held right now by Anderson Silva, and it's 10. So if I can break that, that'll be an awesome thing. And to be able to have the most finish as a flyweight with, knockouts, submissions, and TKOs, that's another goal. And just being the most active flyweight, as a champion, I'm a pretty active guy, and not having, any injuries. Those are all goals that I have set for myself. And once I've done all that stuff, then, and things get better for myself. And when Dana White and those guys approach me about 135, then we'll make it happen. Don't get it wrong. Dana White and Luis Fertitta, we had a talk already about going to 135, and we had discussions, but that's where they stayed.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Frank. What did you think of Fabricio Verdum's victory over Cain Velasquez? What did it say about Cain? What did it say about Fabricio? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, Cain's a warrior, and I don't think that one fight really brought me up anything about him. But, I mean, it really stands for Fabricio. It's phenomenal. The guy, at one point, the UFC had released him. He's got back in the UFC. I think he has one of the longest win streaks right now in the heavyweight division. And he comes back and battles his way up and wins decisively down there the heavyweight titles, not only, not by decision, but by submission. I think Fabricio Verdum is a phenomenal representative of our sport. He goes out there, he's marketable, he pushes out there with the fans, he's out there very accessible, and he's a phenomenal warrior, and he's added to his abilities. He's not a one-trick pony. People out there really respect that he is one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the world. But on top of that, he really has added a really great stand-up game that if people underestimate, they're going to have a bad night.
Considering how soundly the fight was ended and went, do you think it was the right call to give Cain an immediate rematch?
No, I thought that actually that they mixed up the division by having him take over as the champion, and I actually thought Andre was actually going to get the title shot. I thought that was extremely interesting. But for Cain to get the immediate rematch, I mean, the guy's a great champion, so I guess you give him that opportunity. And a lot of people want to put into the oxygen was very thin there, and and I don't know. I wasn't in Cain's training camp. I don't know how much I really attributed to it. I know that Fabricio was fighting in the same oxygen, and so I think that Cain just really had a great night, and his stand-up really pushed the pace of the fight, where Fabricio started taking bad shots, and that's what led him into the submission.
And finally, Andre, your thoughts on Fabricio's performance over Cain, and whether you feel like giving Cain the rematch was a sensible move by the UFC.
Can I have more comments about Fabricio Verdum? I was disappointed, to be honest with you. I thought Cain going to beat him, but the fact we have a new heavyweight champion in the UFC right now is Fabricio Verdum, and hopefully one day I'm going to fight him again.
Thank you.
That concludes the question and answer portion. I'd like to turn the call over to Mr. Costello for any additional or closing remarks.
Thanks, Chanel. We'd like to thank everybody again for joining us on today's call. UFC 191 Fight Week activities will include Ultimate Media Day next Thursday at MGM, as well as the Go Big launch event on Friday at MGM just prior to weigh-ins. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next week here in Las Vegas.
Thank you.
That does conclude today's conference. Thank you for your participation.